Hello and welcome to Glass Half Full Reviews, and am I crazy or are comedians a little too funny nowadays? Today I am going to be reviewing and deconstructing the first two episodes of the latest season of Louie. The first episode, of course, is called Back, and the second, Model. Now, why don't we start with episode 1. Now, the episode title refers to two things. Obviously, the show itself is back, but it also refers to the infirmity of old age, this sense of mortality that is a theme that permeates the episode. The theme of growing older runs through the episode, which the stand-up segments explicitly make clear. He discusses how life can seem short or long, depending on your age and perspective. But being Louie, he does it hilariously and offensively. Of course, this starts with the initial brilliant segment, where the noise from the outside, which often seems like it's right there in the room with you, suddenly is literally in the room. This is one of those things about growing older, finding pain in everyday life just a bit more than before. This is connected to the later segments about Louie's back, but I'll get back to that in a minute. First, we should investigate Louie's kids and how he has mixed feelings about them. Often a motif he investigates in the stand-up routines of the show. We see Todd buried as a representation of Louie's negative feelings on his kids. External force that can say the things he thinks, but could never admit to. Then we transition to a few scenes with his kids, demonstrating further these complicated relationships. Louie wants his kids to be strong and independent.
If I don't help you and you struggle, then you get stronger. And then by doing more than you believe you can do, you put yourself in a moment of doubt and pain and you...
Just stop!
This is further emphasized by his cooking choices, which perhaps his daughters don't fully appreciate. And yet Louie is greatly irritated by Jane being a jerk about the food. He can't help but find Louie's assignment...
Dear AIDS?
We have to write a letter to AIDS.
Very ridiculous. Skipping the surprising Beatles impression, the setup for the final act is genius in its own way. It's a conversation between Louie and his comedian friends, and, as expected, some odd truth comes out. I have no idea if Jim Norton was saying anything true about himself, but it was kind of a brilliant conversation anyway. There's this feeling that is touched on often by the show about gender roles, and here, Louie explores it again with methods of self-gratification. What is acceptable for a man and what is too feminine? And yet, when Louie begins to investigate the possibility of a marital aid for his own devices, he is punished for his curiosity by old age coming back. His back is injured. This leads to one of the funniest moments of the episode, when Louie is helped out by an old lady, which is such an obvious, ironic joke, it just becomes even funnier because of that. And that leads, of course, to the doctor's office, and although Charles Grodin's deadpan and uncaring doctor eats and eats in a sublimely awkward way. His advice is also Louie's advice. Try not to be stupid about your body. It wasn't designed that way. So, Louie finally achieved the triumph over pain and infirmity by utilizing a device meant for pleasure that may have curative powers, after all. And that is a pretty hilarious juxtaposition. And now let's move on to episode 2, and this one's a doozy. The name of the episode is Model, and there is a lot to unpack here. There are a few themes in this episode, one of which is derived from the episode title. Louie has explored gender dynamics and relationships many times. He's played with the cliché of the fantasy woman, the manic pixie dream girl, like when Parker Posey played a love interest that literally died of whimsy. But here we have another variant of the type, with Yvonne Strahovski doing some excellent work as the disaffected person that has nearly everything she wants. We've seen her play this sort of fantasy character before in Chuck, and that one was more of the nerdy fantasy, and then we had the serial killer fantasy in Dexter, so nothing new for her. So as for the episode title, Model. So she's a model in profession, but she's also a model for the idle rich, the girl seeking danger in life, and the dream girl. Is it a coincidence that her attraction to Louie is because he made her laugh?
I wonder if I could make you laugh the way that you do for me. That'd be nice.
Naturally, she fails to understand how meaningful laughter is, resorting to childish tricks to induce laughter in Louie, who doesn't seem to laugh often. She pays for her crime of misunderstanding with a hyperbolic level of damage to her face and eyes.
Oh, Jesus. Like some permanent damage to her vision. Oh, God. And her pupil is paralyzed.
The ridiculous and sudden, horrific description of injuries draws comedy from the juxtaposition from the slapstick punch of the last scene. Reality intruding on fantasy.
Well, maybe it's not really happening.
But how did it happen? Wrapped around this tale of fantasy, Louie finds rejection by a bartender, probably at a comedy club, and completes with his glee that his pain might get him laid. She is the simplest sort of fantasy girl, a girl that through some machination suddenly becomes interested. The secondary theme is rich versus poor, showing how empty life could be for the ultra-rich, sterile and safe. Louie's famous friend Jerry Seinfeld asks for his help at a benefit at East Hampton, in a place called the Carlisle. East Hampton is an interesting town where over half the houses are the second homes of someone, and the name Carlisle evokes shades of things like the luxury Manhattan Carlisle Hotel or the Carlisle Group, a billion-dollar private equity firm. Louie arrives in his typical outfit, so out of place he is literally pushed aside. Jerry gives him a security guard's jacket, a signifier of the working class, and thus absurd in the setting, meaning it's a pretty funny thing to see. Then Jerry mentions billionaires and trillionaires.
These are the billionaires and trillionaires of Hampton Beach.
There are trillionaires now?
Yeah.
An interesting exaggeration. Currently, Bill Gates is the wealthiest man in the world with a net worth of $76 billion. Although the total money of all billionaires in the world is $6.4 trillion for only 1,645 people. It serves as an extreme way to enhance the absurdity of the scene. These men and women with ungodly amounts of money need a clean comedy routine so as not to offend their delicate sensibilities. Louie proceeds to have a hilariously awkward set where he calls the audience slave owners and wonders why the revolt hasn't yet happened, contrasting with the jokes about the stupidity of chickens.
There's been no Martin Luther chicken.
This clear uncaring about propriety tickles Yvonne's unnamed character, so she wants to return the favor. But yet, in real life, Louis C.K. the comedian isn't poor, whereas in the show, it's a bit different. We see Louis the character talking to a funny Victor Garber as a barely effectual lawyer, and Louis says he has nothing.
I mean, they're rich and I don't have anything, so what?
Perhaps that's not it at all. Because at the end, when Louis finds the possibility of something with the bartender, the same music plays as it did with the fantasy girl. So although he may not have money, Louis still has value. The ability to create joy through laughter, and pity through pain. It's a brilliant episode that feels painful sometimes to watch, but the hidden underlying message is a common theme, that Louis feels out of place where he is. And perhaps the real-life Louis C.K. has his own sort of cognitive dissonance about being rich, and thus disconnected to other rich people. So, those were the first 2 episodes of the latest season of Louie, and I, for one, am really glad this show is back. There's always a lot to think about, always a lot to talk about, and I can't wait for more episodes this season. Thanks for stopping by. Jimmy, 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 Jimmy. Jimmy, 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 wow.